As you probably guessed, this is not how much coffee I wanted. I actually wanted it to fill the entire cup, but two things happened that I completely hate. And even though I've had this machine for almost 4 months now, it still happens until today. There is only 3 buttons on the machine, and I'll show you exactly how it looks like in a second. And one button is meant to be for a large cup, one button is meant to be for 2 cups, so if you want 2 cups like this, and then the third one is for the steamer, if you want a steamer or foam hot milk to make a cap or anything like that. Only those 3 buttons are responsible for controlling the entire machine. So you can actually use them by a sequence of holding one button and then pressing on the other, or double pressing on one button and then the third one, to decide or configure how much coffee you want, or how hot it should be, or automatically save it so that the next time you press on the same button, the same amount of coffee gets dropped. Now, I've had this machine for like 4 months now. At the beginning, it was completely difficult to use, and obviously it's my first time having a machine like that. And I would assume that if someone is used to having coffee machines, this would be like a complete piece of cake for them. They would be able to entirely use it straight away. But it was my first time purchasing a coffee machine like this that actually is the brewing, and you can add options and so on. And so it was actually much harder to use than I thought. It took me a while to do it. And even until now, the water, for example, so the reason this is too little is because yesterday my wife tried to use it and she accidentally held it for too long, and so it reconfigured how much a shot should be. And then also because the water level, which is held at the very back, got empty, like it finished, or it wasn't completely full to begin with, but there is no indication of that at all. So it's held in this and it's at the very back. You actually can't see it that well because it's usually against the wall. And so you can see that the water is below that, I'll call it tap, or below the tap that sucks the water. And so obviously there wasn't enough water to continue with the coffee. But there was no indication at all that that is the case. And I know I'm asking for something very silly or being very peculiar here, but this whole video is about why physical machines and physical equipment, physical tools, physical doors, everything that is physical has a much poorer design compared to digital. Or at least, just because I know everyone's going to scream in the comments, the cheap or the medium cost products, items, are usually having poor design. Now, we can replicate this entirely in the digital world and it will be so much easier, but for physical products, and this is not a cheap machine, it's not also an expensive one, it's a mid-level, I would say, or an entry level, I would say, but I still feel like that is a horrible design. And in this video, what I'm going to try and do is explain why physical machines have a much worse design, or I would say less efficient designs compared to digital products. Even if you give someone a digital product, they should be able to use it straight away versus a physical product. Let's get started. All right, so this is the first time I'm actually using the option in the new camera to dual cam, like show both. So I'm not sure how that will turn out. But before we get into digital products, what I wanted to show is some physical products that I use daily and why, or the issues that I had with them. So as I was explaining before, these are the 3 buttons that control the entire coffee machine. There is also this dial here, or this button, that when you click, it starts steaming through here. So you can make a cap or a latte or anything like that. And anyone who uses coffee like so much, or a professional at it, please don't have me. I'm just a tech guy, but I want to prove a point, or I want to discuss a point. Now, the water is usually held, or it is held in that container over here. So it's full, or you would be able to sort of sometimes see the water level. At the moment, I couldn't tell at all where the water was because it's a bit dark, and I'm assuming most people will actually hold this or store it to the back of a watch. That's how we have it here. But there isn't even any lines on this side that show you the water level. And I think if I go to the other side, there isn't any as well. So we are stuck with no water level at least, but that is totally fine. I guess it's a very silly thing that you can just check with your eyes and be able to tell. But there's also, so once I put that coffee, and I actually recorded that, I didn't realize at all that there was no water. This actually happened by coincidence. I was just wanting to show the amount of coffee due to my wife not putting enough, reconfiguring it so that the amount of coffee was less. But it turns out that the water, so it's a real life example, that the water level was too low to actually make anything more than that. And as you can tell, when I pressed the button, the machine worked entirely the same. It didn't flash, it didn't let me know that there's no water, it didn't let me know anything. And I'm actually going to try while you're with me now to press on it, and it still continues. So right now it's actually trying to pass water that doesn't exist into the coffee and produce coffee, but as you can tell, there is nothing. Now, in my opinion, that is a poor design. There should be any indication that there is no water. But what this will do is that it will continue the entire process as if there is water, and even after that, if I click it again, there won't be anything letting me know that you didn't even get coffee. There will be no indication that there is no coffee that came out. All these buttons are responsible for the entire machine, and so sometimes if you also want to configure it to have a different sizing, so for example right now I just wanted to stop it, but I clicked it too early, and now next time I use the machine, how long it took me before the first press and the second press is how much coffee is going to go down. And worse than that, there's also no indication of what the current level is. So if I bring a smaller cup and put it, or a massive small cup and put it here, and that was too much, it will just overspill. Because there was no indication, there is nothing for me, the user, to be able to know what is the saved memory on this, or what is the saved volume of coffee that should be coming out of this. Now I'm going to discuss another product, which is an air fryer, and I know a lot of people love it. And then I'll go back to the coffee machine and the air fryer and show you how I would develop this in software, or how this most likely would have been developed in software. And then I'll discuss why it wasn't the case when it came to the physical product. So over here, we've got the lovely air fryer. Now, a lot of people use it. I just recently used it for the first time, and I did a horrible mistake. So my wife asked me to use the air fryer and set it up to do, I think it was fries. And when I looked at this, straight away, she was like, change the heat so that it goes for the fries, or so that we're doing fries, which is that one. Now I looked, which again could be entirely my fault, but I looked at this dot over here, this indicator. I saw how this is set as a curve. And so what I did is I moved the dial to be pointing at the fries, because that is what we wanted to do. Now I thought that meant that this will be automatically be set to fries. But when my wife came, she realized that I did this and she told me off, as you would, and I agree with her. And the reason for that, the reason I put it is because I assumed, because these are in a curve, this is a curve, the pointer is here, then I simply need to point it towards the item that I want to heat, which is what I would do in software if we have a similar setting. But turns out, and you can't even see it until you do this, it turns out that the dial here has its own temperatures, which are completely separate from the one above. So here, it's just telling you that if you need to cook fries, you need to set it up on 200 degrees. So you would come over here and you would set it up on 200 degrees. If you want, I'm gonna assume this is fish, it says 160, then you would change this to 160. It has nothing to do with trying to match it with the top. Now, this was my mistake, of course, but as someone who uses a lot of software, I instantly thought that I'm meant to be trying to match this with the shapes, because that is how buttons in software work. And I just had no idea. Now, I'm gonna go now to my office. I will show you how I would have replicated the software for, if I was to make this in software, for this air fryer and also for the coffee machine. And then I'm gonna go over why I think the reason is for software or for physical products having poorer design than software. And we can actually have a look throughout the appliances in the kitchen. So even the kitchen, this is pretty simple. You can choose which one sorry, the camera's lagging, but you can choose which one you want and then turn it on and so on. This one's simple enough. This one is also simple enough. But then we go towards things like the microwave, and that is entirely a different ballgame. Like, most of the time, what I do to turn it on is just, I keep clicking on 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, and it's not focusing, yep. Or 10 minutes based on what I want. But once I start getting into all the other options, it's completely difficult. Or not completely difficult, I don't use it as much, but it is definitely more difficult than what a software would have. Now, the final product that I want to show and enjoy the tour of my house are AC controls. Now, it is very simple. You just need to click on and off. But when it comes, for example, to switching the fan, and let's actually turn it on. So I turned it on now. Now, first of all, there is no clear indication straight away if it's on or not. As soon as I see run, now I know that it's on. It takes a few minutes. So I don't know two things. A, if the device actually registered my input. So if it registered that I clicked on it, because sometimes I click on it and the button lights up, but nothing happens. It's only when that run starts working after a few seconds. And so what happens sometimes is that I would click on, and this run button wouldn't come, and then I would click in again, and I would realize that it turns us off because it was turning on, it just didn't let me know as a user early enough that it's starting to run. Now you can see that the fan is high, and if I want to even make it higher, so I just clicked on it and went back to high. And the reason for that is because we're going to wait for it to sleep. Clicking on any of the buttons first makes it wake up, you can see, and now it changed to medium. I can do that, now it's low, now it's high I'm assuming high continuous, so it's going to continue going high regardless of the temperature of the house. And we've got cool and heat. Now it's really good, it ends up working, you end up getting used to it, and I'm not saying that it's impossible to use, but it does require a lot of the user memory to remember what each option is. And even now, if I click on fan again, I'm not sure, as someone who uses this for the first time, for example, I'm not sure what's after high continuous. What I would do this if we had it in the digital world would be different, and I'm gonna show you for each of these examples how I would have had it. So I'm gonna go now, we're gonna create it, and I'll get back to you. Okay, now before I get to show you the designs that I've made that I feel like might be better than the designs that are currently there in the physical world for the coffee machine, the air fryer, the AC, and so on, I want to show you an example that actually kind of summarizes a lot of the pain that I find exists across all physical products, and that is something that you all relate to, and that is doors. Now, I'm sure there's so many people that are about to enter a shop or a product or a restaurant or McDonald's or anything, and you get into that really awkward or dumb situation where you're pushing the door, but it turns out to be a pull, or you're pulling the door and it ends up being a push. And by the way, even though sometimes the signs are correct, for some reason, a lot of the times they're not. It can say pull and it ends up being a push. It can say push, ends up being a pull. But I'm here to tell you that it's actually not your fault. And that is because doors do not follow the basic design that your brain is actually used to. Now that can be because of software, but also I'm sure that problem would have existed before that. Any door that is a pull should easily have this handle over here, or that one, because you're about to pull. And so your brain automatically seeing this object or this function on any door, even if it says push, will not impact you. You will still try to pull automatically without even knowing, without being aware of it. You shouldn't have a handle if you're about to push. What you should have is instead a blank slate. So this is a push one. You can see that usually, and most of the time, this was meant to be the standard where this is easily a pull without reading, without anything. If you see this, you're more inclined to pull it, while this one you're more inclined to push. And that's because you can't even pull it if you wanted to. Now, same thing for these ones. This is actually a push in that scenario. That one is a push. This one I guess can be a little bit confusing, but I'm assuming this one is actually the same as this without the cover. All of these are pushes where you can push and go through as compared to pulling like these ones. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, not to say that doors have a bad design, because they actually don't. We have a very easy solution. The design concept is there for solving that problem when it comes to pull and push. It's right here. We have it. If a door has this, it's a pull. If a door has this, it's a push. So why is it then that even though we have a design concept for an item like this, that we still find ourselves in a situation where we don't know if we should pull or push? If we have this and it exists, it will work. Anyone that sees this pushes, anyone that sees this pulls. Why is it that we do not have this applied, or this logic at least A, applied indoors, even though it's designed for it, and B, why is that simple logic doesn't apply to other items? The reason for that is because of capitalism. It's because of the price. It's because of the cost and the effort that goes into making physical products versus digital products. And a quick example of that is just right now. I went just 30 minutes ago, I went and I showed you the physical products that I had. And in under 30 minutes, I came up with a design for the coffee machine. I came up with a design for the AC controls and a design for the air fryer, how I would have implemented it digitally. Now, in those 30 minutes, I came up with a design for 3 products, and it was much harder to and it would have been much harder to do if it was for a physical product. Because for the physical product, you need to actually collect the materials, you need to collect the items, you need to test it, you need to make sure that it wouldn't break, you need to make sure that it's safety-wise, it's a good product and it wouldn't fail. And so there are so many constraints when it comes to physical products that are not actually there for digital products, especially at the early beginning. If the software that you're doing is not actually that big, there's not that much risk in it as well. So if you're designing a door, now if you want to actually implement that solution where you have a handle for pull and just a slate for push, you need to design 2 different doors. You need to install them in a different way. So that is now money, because you're having 2 different designs. You need to add material. You need to not train people, but people need to be instructed to install the doors for a push and pull differently, because then you're defining how the door is meant to look like. And even though logistically it might make sense in terms of, well, if I see this, I'm going to install it that way. But here there's more time when it comes to implementing your solution of a door. And there's also more time and resources being used to create the door, which is just used to let people in. Now, I think it's the same across anything physical versus a digital product. If you have an air fryer, if you have a coffee machine, if you have anything that requires the user to operate it, it's so much cheaper. It's so much cheaper if you just create 3 buttons rather than 4 buttons or a touch screen or a digital aspect of it that can handle different customer commands. Now, there is a switch that's starting to happen in some industries, for example, the automotive industry, where you can see that most automotive industries are actually trying to remove they're trying to remove buttons and instead put them into a digital software or put them behind a digital wall. Now, some cases that's good, some cases it's not. I'm not a fan of it if all the car controls are in one screen, because then you have to fiddle around with it. But I think a balance of having buttons and a digital software that controls things is great. Now, the opposite side are some products that completely lack that. And usually it is done to, well, save money and save effort and materials. If they had created more buttons on that coffee machine, it would have cost them more money. It would have cost them more money than to just have 3 buttons. If they added a screen, it would have cost them more money. Same thing for all the other products. And that's why I think for digital wise, it's very easy for us to have this much more refined software. Not because it is easier to do in software, but not because the logic of coming up with a solution is harder, but because the implementation of a beautiful, nice, simple design costs money in the physical world much more than it does in the software world, in the digital world. So more refined solutions, or more refined or more accessible solutions in the physical world will always cost more than the digital world. And that's why I think we find the digital world much more accessible. Any website now should at least be accessible by anyone. Computers can be completely accessible by blind people. They can be completely accessible by people that do not hear. We have subtitles. We have accessibility buttons where you can click and the screen gets red if you're blind. We have so many options in software that makes any software, or almost most software, so much accessible, so much easy to use, very simple to understand, from generations of old people to young people. Anyone or most people will have a look and they can at least navigate throughout their computers. While someone like me, for example, that was the first time to use an air fryer, it wasn't the end of the world, but it did actually confuse me for a few seconds. And I'm wondering if more people would be confused using more physical products as we're progressing versus not. I think the reason for that, also just so that we're not blaming it entirely on the physical world, is because software is making us used to things being easy, or it's making us used on things being refined. There is and this gets taught at uni, by the way, in our degree in software engineering and computer science and so on. It's our job as software engineers or developers or designers to make sure that our software is capable of being used by the dumbest person alive, by the dumbest person ever. Throughout any user experience that you have, even if you don't realize it, you're constantly being prompted to perform actions that the developer wanted you to do, rather than that free will as much throughout the physical world. And I guess the issue here is that as someone who spends most of the time in the digital world, I'm so used on the developers and the engineers and the designers prompting me or pushing me towards a path in their software versus the physical world. If I click on a delete button, I'm going to be thinking twice before deleting it, not because I just like thinking twice before deleting something, but mainly because there's a massive red button and a note that will say, are you sure you want to delete it? And that is where my care is. If versus, for example, just crunching a paper and throwing it, I feel much more comfortable doing that. If I want to call someone, there's a green massive button that has a phone icon on it that I can click on. And I'm not saying this stuff doesn't exist in the physical world, because it definitely does. I'm just saying it's more expensive to make it as refined and as accessible as the digital world. Now, without further ranting, let me show you the designs right now with this at the end of this episode of what I created for the coffee machine, the AC controls, and for the air fryer, and let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, so this is the design that I came up with. Now, obviously this is not the best and it doesn't look good, but all I wanted to show is how quickly, in less than half an hour, and I actually also used AI to generate some of the controls and things like that, but I just wanted to show how quickly you can actually generate software and make it so that it fits all the things that you need. So things like showing the water level already and adding information, so such as current water reservoir level. So there's so many buttons sometimes that I'm not sure what they are, but in software you can just create this little button over here and it will show you exactly what this option is. You can configure things to show exactly or reflect exactly how much or the volume that you will do when you click on it. You can increase the coffee strength, and actually have a live indication of what it is. So if I'm clicking on the button, I have no idea how much or the strength of it. I know that I'm increasing it or reducing it, but it doesn't reflect on the coffee machine at all how much or how strong is it. Same thing for the temperature. I sort of have to guess or remember what it was defaulted to and what I changed it to. Now, for the air conditioner, this one, it was just very quickly. And what I like is that you can actually know what your option is going to do. So with the fan, when I was showing you, as I'm clicking on it, I am not too sure where is low or where is high. I'm not sure where the next step will be once I click on the button. But here I know where I'm going. I know that if I go left, it will be lower. If I go again, it will be low. But on the AC unit that I showed you, you just have to keep clicking until you know where you're going. Same thing for all other options. Same thing for selecting the mode. So I have just two buttons that do not necessarily tell me if my actions have taken place or not until some time. And that is an issue because here, for example, in software, once I clicked off, I know that the software is off. Everything shuts off. There's a completely different UI that appears. If I turn it on, now I have more options. Obviously, they cannot do that in the physical world in a cheap method. So you're left having to wait and see if your actions had a response or not. And finally, for the air fryer, you can choose a set of things straight away that you want. You can know exactly what the temperature is. You can start it, you can stop it. I don't have to wait for a random timer. I know exactly if it's working or not. I know if it is preheated. I know exactly everything. I don't have to guess anything. This was a very weird overrun. It was a quick video that I just wanted to create for a really long time, and I'm not sure if it's gonna work out or look good at the end or not, but I really wanted to show the difference between creating things in the software world and the digital world, and the physical world, and why sometimes, or most of the times, software is much more accessible or much more easier to use, and that is usually down to cost in everything. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know what you think of the examples that I provided, and I hope to see you in the next episode.